Alright YouTube, hey what's up, Johnny Glock here. I'm doing kind of like a production run right now of some triggers, and I wanted to like show you guys some things here. I know I talk about 3 different distinct break feels, sort of like that very 1911-ish feel with a glass rod break. Some guys call it tactical. Secondly, like a semi-rolling, which is just sort of in it's almost like the Glock feel with the 3.5 connector. It has some sponge to it, very minimal stacking, but it has more of like a semi-rolling feel. It's not as clicky. And then third, we have just a pure rolling break, which is that break where it's pull, 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 pull break. You've seen a bunch of these. I've been putting these little short trigger things up so you guys can see all the differences and all the aluminum shoes that I do and all that stuff. So, to each one of these, and this is the disadvantage you have, you don't have a ton of bars and a ton of stock around to work with, but I do. So as I'm putting these groups together and as I'm doing what I'm doing, I have these, basically color-coded to these distinct break feels. So, when you get them, they won't look like this. They'll usually have the black one on it, but I have the green one is the very tactical feel, the glass rod. The red one is the semi-rolling, and the yellow is the pure rolling. Now the reason I do that is because when I drop these, when I'm speccing them out inside of a frame, just to make sure that I'm within margin, just like a couple processes that happen, that I am in margin, they have a feel to them, and instead of, I used to try to fit as whatever the saying is, like a square whatever in a round hole or whatever. You know what the saying is. But now what I do is I kind of like build these all up and let them kind of like do their thing, and it makes life a lot easier. I'm not trying to force something into these. Of course there's a proprietary thing that I do to every one of the connectors, every one of the bars. There's some tuning that I do to the springs. Sometimes there's some tuning I do to the ejectors. There's a variety of different things that I do when you have your custom requests. So this is part of it right here. I had a kind of, wasn't really disturbing, but on Glock Talk there was some guy that was kind of roasting me, saying that there's no way my claims are false about giving stuff to selling stuff to agencies and departments and stuff like that, and I pretty much squashed that. But in that rant, he says that I badmouth other companies, and that if you call me, it's basically so I can thump my chest and tell you how great my triggers are. Now first he starts out with saying he doesn't know me and never had any experience with me, so his whatever he's saying is hearsay and opinion. But any of you guys that have ever called me, you understand that there are nuances that you cannot get through texts and emails. Now, if you're going to buy a drop bar or a pure carry, those are kind of pre-configured the way they are. They're EDC. If you're buying one of these groups that I build specifically to your requests, it is going to benefit you by having a conversation with me about why you want it a certain way. And a lot of you newbies out there know too that I can give some direction and I can explain to you things that you might not even know. Not that I can thump my chest and tell you how great I am. We already know how great I am. Anyway, that was a joke, and you can tell I have a sense of humor about this stuff. There are nuances that get lost in text and emails. So please give me a call. It's going to benefit you. That's something that's going to help you get the most out of your money and really get this trigger designed the way you want it to be designed. And also, it's my due diligence. I can make a lot more money if I had a click and buy store. Just click and buy, man, all day long. But it's my due diligence to vet calls just to make sure enhanced trigger systems are not going in the wrong hands, or even in the hands of people that I can't tell how many people have got the kit and said, you know what, I'm just going to send you my gun. I don't feel comfortable doing this, and that's great. That's an intelligent adult decision. If you don't really know, you don't have the skills, and there might not be like a Glock armor or a reputable gunsmith around you, to send a gun to me. And usually I end up doing a bunch of other stuff to it too to get it really, really tasty for you. So that's just a little thing that I just want to try to explain that a little bit about how these come to be. And if you are out there and are trying to create, a trigger exactly how you want it and it's not working out, it's probably because the parts you have inherently, because these are stamped parts, they're just not in that kind of tolerance for that. There might be an off angle, or there might be an off radius, or there's a million different things. Your striker, it might not even be these parts, it might be your striker, and to actually, when I ramp up on a trigger, I can basically tell, okay, I can feel that this is like I've said before, the Princess and the Pea. I can tell if it's either coming from like a safety plunger, or there's drag at the transfer bar, or it's coming from the shoe, just because I've done this thousands and thousands of times. So basically, if you're having that, and I know it's frustrating, man. I've talked to so many of you that I've done everything I could, I've followed your videos, and I just can't get it how I like it. It's not necessarily your inadequacy at all. These are stamped parts, and until if you take the time to learn of how you have to actually, I don't do the plug and play stuff. That's what a lot of people are stuck to. I'm removing some material and changing things to get them to behave how I want within certain parameters. But fundamentally, foundationally, I have to start with something that already has a tactical feel, or a semi-rolling, or a rolling feel. Sure, I can create them. That's kind of what I have to do when I get a shoe. I have to make that whole thing happen, like an aluminum shoe. And you've seen the differences on those snappy triggers, quick resets, and the last one I showed you that had he wanted the surprise break, and so those are some, that's another aspect of building all this stuff. But I thought I'd just mention this, to people that are out there doing it, locksmithing enthusiasts that are just like, this isn't working out. Don't get too frustrated. Buy a couple bars, buy a couple connectors, and also, people that are potential customers that have apprehension and calling me and stuff like that. Give me a call. We'll work it out. We'll figure it out. And been really, really busy, so I know I'm trying to put some more videos up. This next one I really want to put up is on connectors, and it's not going to be every connector underneath the, God's green earth. What it's going to do is show you how to tune a connector. Okay, so when you get a raw connector, you will know what to do with it. You will be able to look at it and say, this needs smoothed out. This is what needs to happen. Like a lone wolf connector, they don't do well polishing them. For some reason their finish grabs onto stuff, and you got to really be careful that and know how to polish them in a different way. Whereas something like a ZevTech connector has a lot of chrome and doesn't have like the same type of finish that's on the Lone Wolf is going to polish different. Same thing with that Terran Tactical that's like a nickel electrolysis plated. Those are all going to do different things. And that's the difference of having hundreds of them come through your hands and knowing how to work on them. So that's what the next video is going to be. Hopefully I can get out in the next few days. I have a gun show this weekend. That's why I'm not behind my sheet. I'm right here in the back of my gun shop. The guy called me a hobbyist in the back of someone's gun shop. Anyway, so it's laughable. But anyway, so the next one will be on connectors. JohnnyGlocks.com is the website, which will just refer you to me anyway. You're on the YouTube channel, which is great. Subscribe. Tell some buddies about it. That would be cool to get more information out and about. And 941-376-4383 is the telephone number. So give me a call and let's talk some triggers and have a good time. All right, take care.